How would you respond to someone who insists that we need quote unquote proof for biblical truths?
That depends on how they're defining proof, right? In 1 Peter 3, as Christians, we're told to always be ready to give a reason to anyone who asks us the reason for the hope that is in us. So as Christians, we ought always to be ready to explain what we believe and why we believe it, right? So to that extent, I agree, but that's usually not what people are talking about. Usually what they're talking about is scientific proof for historic events. And what I mean by that is this, like the scientific method. In order to apply the scientific method, something has to be observable and measurable and repeatable. Right? We got some science majors in here, right? Right? You got a hypothesis, you got to be able to test the hypothesis, right? Got to be observable, it's got to be measurable, it's got to be repeatable. You don't use the scientific method for historical events. They're not observable, right? I can't observe George Washington's presidency. So I don't believe George Washington's presidency by the scientific method. I use an evidentiary method, right? I use the kind of method that you use in a courtroom. Okay, it's a different approach. It's a different standard. So oftentimes, what people are asking for is something that doesn't exist for any kind of historical event, right? So we have to be able to give a reason, right? But the idea that would be held up to the kind of scrutiny that nothing else in history would be held to, or that it is, philosophically inconsistent with the pursuit of truth concerning those types of events. That's a non-starter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can't really get anywhere with that.
That's a non-starter, right?
Yeah.
George Washington was our first president. Prove it scientifically.